Hi everyone, now we're up to what happened to me when I got government housing, part 28. And in the last video about my story, I told you that the respondent had been throwing rubbish in my side yard and that I believed he was responsible for throwing rocks at my side window as well. And as you know, that side window is also my side door. The rock throwing incidents were quite scary for me and for my daughter, but I don't believe I reported them to the police because of how we had been treated. And also because the police were trivializing what was happening to me. And when I tried to report other incidents to them, they didn't seem concerned about that. As you can see, like in previous videos, they would just simply argue with me rather than, apply themselves to the issue that I had actually reported. I made a video of the rubbish that was in my side yard on the 20th of the 7th, 2016. And although this may seem strange to other people who are not going through the same sort of thing, it became normal for me to take photos and make videos and write up statements because I thought that I would be using these things in court. As we know, when I went to court for my application for compensation, my application was refused. But back in 2016, I didn't know that that was going to happen. My faith in the justice system was so strong that I thought all I needed to do was to gather evidence and that would be enough for me to get compensation. And as we know, it wasn't like that at all. As I'll explain later in this series, the judge who heard my case didn't even look at some of my evidence. But for now, I'll play you the video that I made just so you can get an idea of what my daily activity was reduced to, and so you can see the rubbish that was in my side yard and see how disgusting it was. This is a video of the rubbish left in my side yard by the respondent as at today's date. As you can see, there's a large amount in the corner. New rubbish there, and the rock that was thrown. It's quite a large rock. The rock, a gardening container, and as we can see, the respondent has flowers outside his property, and some of those flowers have been pulled out and thrown into my side yard. The photo that you can see here was taken on the 30th of the 6th, 2015. And this photo was taken when I first moved in, and you can see that the fence was old and they replaced that fence at a later date. So it looks different, but it is still the same fence. You can see that there is foil and ash in my side yard. And what happened was that the respondent would burn things in a clay planter that he had on the balcony, which was outside his unit. And then he would brush the ash from that down into my side yard because it was directly underneath. So he started using my side yard as a rubbish bin when I first moved into the unit. There was one time when I looked outside and I saw the flames coming from the clay planter, and I was very scared, so I actually rang the fire brigade. Because I rang 000, this would still be on record, so it can be checked. And this was submitted in my evidence to the court along with everything else that I'm telling you in my story, apart from the obvious personal things which were left out because I didn't think that those things were suitable for court. And also, more to the point, I wasn't even asked about, my feelings. Anyway, on the day that I rang the fire brigade, the flames were very high and very sharp. Like, I've actually never seen flames like that before. I don't know what was in the planter or what would have caused the flames to be so high, but I was scared of the units catching fire. And I was definitely scared of the flames, being so close to the opening of my door, and I didn't feel comfortable walking out the door with, flames which would have been close to my head and my body. I suffered a lot of coughing because of the ash that the respondent brushed into my side yard, and I didn't know how to get rid of it because there was so much of it. He would also pick off dead flowers from his pot plants and just throw them into my side yard. At a later date, one of the clay planters was actually picked up and smashed onto the concrete in my side yard. As you can see in this photo, there was a lot of other rubbish which was generally unhygienic. The respondent was degrading me by dumping rubbish into my yard, and he seemed intent on punishing me, but I didn't know what he thought I had done to him. I definitely didn't like him, and he knew that I had an intervention order against him. But given that we had never been friends, I don't know why that would have been such a big deal for him. The respondent maintained an interest in me and a violent rage towards me that I couldn't justify. And given that I had to go to court without a lawyer, he never had to justify his rage in court. He kept throwing things into my side yard, and he threw a stick with black paint on it into the side yard. And this will become more relevant in this series later as I explain what happened in another violent incident. Now, by the 21st of the 11th, 2017, which is a bit later in my story, but I'm just telling you about the rubbish at the moment, so we'll be going back over this in later videos. There was tons of rubbish in my side yard. This is by the end of the period of time that we'll be talking about in this series. But this photo was taken after the respondent threw a violent tantrum, and he threw a whole heap of rubbish and large rubbish and hard rubbish into my side yard all in one go. Normally, what would happen is that it was what he would throw, whatever he felt like throwing, and it built up. But on this particular occasion, it was quite extreme, and it happened all in one go. And when I was sitting inside my unit, I could see all of the rubbish, not just after this big incident, but all the time, right back from the start, right back from 2015. If I sat in my lounge, I could see the rubbish through the glass, and if I wanted to avoid that, I had to avoid using that room, and I had to avoid raising the blind. So that was another way that my behavior was being controlled. I didn't want to open my blind, but this led to other problems because it made me feel claustrophobic, and it made me feel like the space around me was getting smaller and smaller, and it disgusted me. Seeing something every day that you find disgusting is like, it's not just stressful, it's something else. I don't know how to describe it, but there is something that happens to your feelings when you're repulsed by something. It's very strange. Also, there was broken glass scattered throughout the rubbish, and that was dangerous, and we could have easily cut our feet on that. The food containers were attracting slugs and other things, and that was disgusting, and it was embarrassing. I didn't want to get deliveries, and I didn't want anyone coming to my home. Everyone who came to the block must have seen that rubbish in the side yard of my unit, and they must have thought that it was mine. So that's how I was living at that time. I didn't want to go out my front door because I didn't want to be pounced on by the respondent, and I didn't want to go out my side door because it was so dirty, and I didn't want to be injured by glass. I felt more and more trapped every day, and I didn't see a way out.